Dear friends, there once was a small boy called Will. He didn't have many friends and struggled to socialise in secondary school. One day, he met a group of people online who shared a mutual interest in the little blue tank engine that had dominated his childhood. Now, that unlikely group of friends had grown into young adults who have since all met in person. And this is the story of the adventures they shared together at the Tanniclin Railway for the 4th Awdry Extravaganza. For the first time, however, this tale doesn't begin at the Audrey Extravaganza. You see, since meeting in person last year, Alex had since grown into an incredibly close personal friend of Will and I. And so we pitched the idea of using the week around the main event for a boys' holiday, exploring all the railways within the area that we wanted to. So we drove up to Wales on the Tuesday instead of the Friday. As Will was volunteering at the line, our first stop was on the Tanniclin Railway. But that was nice as we got to experience the line on a quiet day, before the engines were given their faces and before the Sudrians invaded. We also got to see Tanniclin, that being the engine not the railway, for the very first time. As she had been in overhaul for so many years, we'd never seen her at any previous event, and what a treat it was to finally be in her presence. She's an absolutely stunning locomotive, and her blue livery looks incredibly smart in person. An absolute treat to start our trip with. Following that, we stopped at Epilogue the next day, where it became apparent to me how much of Wales was pure view porn. By that I mean this definition, not the other one, you filthy-minded people. After experiencing the line, and yours truly having a bit too much to drink, our next stop on Thursday was the Ffarquhar Railway. It's a short line, but incredibly beautiful. The landscapes were stunning, and I loved going through the tunnel. It was so dark you couldn't see anything inside. Also, Alex got sucked into the next dimension. Once Alex returned for his multi-dimensional travels, we watched Series 4 at our hotel room to prepare ourselves for the start of the main event the following day, which we couldn't have been more excited for. After leaving our hotel in Barmouth, we returned to Towyn, where we were reunited with Will, but not before checking out the Scarloey prop, which slightly distracted us from helping Will out with his luggage, so sorry mate. After that, we met Adam. Yes kids, that is the Thomospherist. Yes, I'm friends with the Thomospherist, and for those of you who idolise him, like this video and I'll give you embarrassing personal facts about him. But in all seriousness, it was really nice to see him again after last meeting at Drayton Manor 8 months before. Together we took a brief train ride, but even that was a special train. Unknowingly, we'd hitched a ride on Edward Thomas's trial run, which she double-headed with Sir Hayden. This wasn't intentional, but it meant that we got to ride behind every engine in operation. More on that later. Later that day, we reunited with Spencer, which was something we were all looking forward to. He's one of the loveliest, kindest people I know, and I'm so grateful to be mates with him. After admiring a mini generation of die-cast diesels in the gift shop, we prepared ourselves for the Fred train. What made this year's train even more special than last's was that we all managed to get a ticket this year, so the whole gang was able to sit together. Myself, Alex, Will, Spencer, and Dante. All of us just sitting there in person and getting to talk with one another as usual, but this time face to face. However, we also had a new member of our group, Matt, the Danish train, and he was soon chatting along with us, and it felt like he'd always been part of the group. It made this incredible experience that much better. As for the train, they had even more surprises in store for this year than last. The train was suddenly stopped at Pendray so he could take some photos of Sir Handel, who was wearing his bandaged face for the first time since the 80s. For those unaware, Sir Hayden, dressed as Sir Handel, once bumped into a tree branch so the crew bandaged his face. This was what inspired the story of Sir Handel Comes Home. In a full circle moment, they'd once again put the bandage on so that we could recreate the illustration from the story. While it was a big crowd in a small station, I'm fairly certain that my recreation was good enough. And I always adore these sorts of surprises at these events, as it always feels like I've been transported right into the world of Sodor. After that, we stopped near the viaduct to take some photos and videos of this majestic diesel locomotive, which looked incredible when appearing through the bushes and crossing the bridge. And it was even better getting to share this experience with the entire gang this time. After posing with Fred at the platform, we returned to the wharf for an exclusive surprise. We all sat down in anticipation, while we were shown narrations of arguably Wilbert Awdry's greatest work, Duke the Lost Engine, performed by the legendary author himself. As with Oliver the Western Engine last year, his narration was incredibly beautiful to listen to. You could tell the passion he had for his world and his stories in his voice and delivery, and I was so happy to experience it. Also, the editing of the illustrations to visualise the narrations was stunning, and really brought the paintings to life. So, to whoever did that, I really appreciate your incredible work. Afterwards, we were shown Audrey's personal layout of the Mid-Sodor, with the models staged to recreate scenes from the book. Also, we were shown the original paintings by the Edwards from the book, which were absolutely beautiful. Like last year, there were details I'd never noticed, like Duke sweating when holding onto Falcon, or the Yarsdale engines watching as Duke was rescued. Also like last year, the best way to show these illustrations off is to show you them. So I'll return after this brief slideshow. Hello again. After we were done, the gang all went to a local chippers and parted for the night, excited for the following day when the extravaganza was going to properly begin. "65 years ago, the 14th volume of the Railway series, and the second to feature the Skarloey Railway, The Little Old Engine, was published. This little book introduced a trusty little diesel called Rusty. While often outshined by his peers, Rusty was a landmark character for the series. The second diesel to be introduced, and the first to be honest and friendly, a complete 180 to the previously introduced diesel. The little diesel proved that it didn't matter what kind of engine you were, steam or diesel, it was an engine's choice to have the character they did. His immediate acceptance from all, except Duncan, also showed that the Skarloey fleet were far less petty and judgmental than their northwestern counterparts. On top of that, there was the incredibly progressive decision by Britt Allcroft to make Rusty gender neutral in the TV series, the only character of such diversity in the entire franchise. Also, I have a personal attachment to Rusty, having driven the little diesel at the second Awdry Extravaganza, the first locomotive I ever drove 2 years ago, which is still one of the best moments of my life. It was an amazingly fun experience, especially getting to increase the speed down the line towards Pendray. With that in mind, I was incredibly excited to celebrate the anniversary of this landmark character, and the team went above and beyond to give Rusty the respect he deserved. He had a beautiful new face, based off an illustration from the story Rock and Roll, as well as a black repaint that was this time resistant to Mother Nature. The boys and I took several photos during the weekend, but we'll get to that. As always, an exhibition was being shown in the museum, with several artefacts from the franchise on display. Like always, they had paintings from the Railway series, props from the TV series, and lots of information about the franchise, as well as models from the Reverend himself. They also had the mid-Sodor layout on display again, along with the Duke narrations in the exhibition, and it was nice to experience them again. Also, we all made sure to book the same slot together so that we could experience what was inside as a group, except for Dante, who accidentally booked the time for the next day. There was a lot of information to discover. For example, in the 80s, or dressed as Sir Handel, Sir Hayden was kicked by children who believed they were disciplining the naughty engine. The main attraction inside the exhibition were the screen-used models of Skarloey, who had already been displayed in the previous years, and Fearless Freddy, which took me right back to my childhood. While not the greatest era of the show in terms of writing or scenery, I still have fond memories of watching the hit model era as a child on Milkshake and on DVD releases. My take-along Freddy was well played with back in the day. So seeing this prop in person was very special and nostalgic for me. And, opinions on his episode aside, it's an absolutely beautiful model that looks very accurate to the real locomotive the character was based on, and I'm happy I got to see it in person. As always, the exhibition was absolutely wonderful, and seeing it all together as a group made it even more special. After leaving the exhibition, we were reunited with Sir Handel, who was wearing a brand new face, based off an illustration from the story Bulldog. It was amazing and really captured the character of the little engine, making it feel like the books had come to life before our very eyes. The face said that, true to his pompous character, Sir Handel was spending the entire weekend basking in the attention. Joining him from the Scarlet Railway, as mentioned earlier, were Rusty and Fred. Also Peter Sam was there, but he spent the whole weekend sitting in the shed, while Sir Handel did all the work. Clearly he was getting some long-awaited payback for all the various times Sir Handel's scheming had forced Peter Sam to do all the work on the line. Veronica Chambers, Robert's daughter, delivered a beautiful speech performing the handover ceremony to hand Sir Handel to the Tally-Clin, despite his rude interruptions. She also mentioned that Christopher Awdry sent his best to the attendees, and it was lovely to hear that he was supportive of the events. Unlike the previous years, the Tally-Clin fleet weren't dressed as their Sudrian counterparts, however they were still wearing faces, some less horrifying than others. They were still absolutely beautiful locomotives that were absolutely stunning to look at. We also got to see Tally-Clin again. She was wearing a face that strongly resembled Hollywood superstar Nicolas Cage, which I was really excited to finally see, as I was fully aware of the face's online reputation, but they hadn't used it at the event since the first one, due to the new 3D faces. And I was so genuinely elated to finally see the famous Nick Cage face, I had to take a photo beside it. While we're on the subject of Nick Cage, Longlegs is very overrated, sorry not sorry. Anyway, after exploring the wharf, looking at some human props hidden in the museum and some of Audrey's models, we all hung out at the wharf for a bit before boarding our next train, which was... Wanting to get on a train as a group during the weekend, but since we couldn't all afford the more expensive trains, we all decided to go for the Chapel train when the tickets went live, because it was one of the cheaper trains. While not a full ride up the line, it was still a lovely journey where we all got to bond and laugh around together. Also, Spencer showed off his customised Thomas faces that he'd made for his own Thomas and for one he'd gifted to Alex.
Go.
So here's my Thomas, and here's Alex's Thomas. They both have different faces. So what I do is I take the face that comes with the toy, put it in a soft lump of clay, wait for that lump of clay to dry out. Then I put more soft clay into the mold. I take it out of the mold, and then I take a sewing pin and use it to alter the face to how I want it to look. And that's how Spencer makes his faces.
Well, one of the smaller events that weekend, this was one of my favourite experiences. It was just lovely to have all of us sat in a compartment together, having our usual conversations and enjoying each other's company. But again, actually in person for once. Also, the scenery of Wales is genuinely the most beautiful I've ever seen. Why doesn't England look like this? After the train returned to wharf, I decided to remain on board, because I booked for the next train, one which awakened my competitive spirit. As discussed prior to the trip, Adam wanted to race the train to Abergwynolwyn, and Dante and I were representing the train in the race, along with our friend Tom Wilkins. So, as I understand it, Adam is racing this train, and Will be joining him, which is fine. But just one thing, I will absolutely, this train is going to win the race, and I will mop the floor with you, and I will celebrate my victory over you, and dance merrily and sing Kumbaya while you are sat there in defeat.
Adam, you do know we're going to win, right?
Oh, well, we'll see about that.
And we're off. The race the train begins here, clearly. The train has just started, and just a message to Adam and Will, this is the Boat Express. Keyword there, express. You don't stand a chance, guys.
Hello everyone! Watch out for the sheep, it's on the track! There's a sheep up ahead.
Our first stop was at Dolgoch, where we got an unfortunate surprise. Well, as we can see, it was the Boat Express, so here we are, and naturally, the train has what?
No, actually we're
Shit.
we're still on the race though. The race is still on. We beat you to this one, but you might make it to Abergwynolwyn, is it?
Alright, well, we will crush you at Abergwynolwyn.
Oh,
we will
okay.
crush him. We're getting there. We're getting there before he is.
We're waiting for you to fill up for water.
You're halfway.
Well, you say that, the race is on. Well, here we are, and oh, look at that. No sign of Adam. Looks like we won, bitches.
We won.
Look who's here.
I arrived on time. Sort of. Not really.
You won.
I lost.
Now, despite Adam leaving it to audience interpretation in his video, I have the outcome right here from the horse's mouth.
Hang on. Say that again. Say that again.
I didn't win.
Which means that you...
Lost. And you won. Perfect.
While there was some debate about the outcome of the race, since Ronan was the first to the platform, since the car was still being parked and the whole gang from the car had yet to arrive, in fact, only two of them had, I'm saying that this means the train won fair and square. Also, I still beat Adam and Will to the platform, so I'm still taking that as a victory. Now, as you can imagine, I celebrated my victory humbly with grace and decorum. Good game, Adam.
But you know,
in these moments,
In these moments.
it's important.
In these
to
moments.
show, it's important.
It's important to show
Good sportsmanship.
good sportsmanship.
Exactly. So I'm going to congratulate my fellow competitor.
I'm going to congratulations, you won.
on a great game.
Mind you just sat down while I did all the driving, running, taking videos. But yeah, sure, you sat on the train.
But,
But,
you know,
You didn't take any of the video.
exactly.
well, I suppose it was so there were some parts where I had the camera up and I was driving. But
No, you didn't.
Okay, I
But the most important thing
is being friends.
is that I won. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
At the very least, Adam has the silver lining that his Audrey X video got more views in 24 hours than my one for last year got in a year. And it will most likely be the same for this year's as well. But what is an indisputable fact is that I won.
Actually, I think you'll find that I won the race. You just sat in the coach boasting out of your asshole, while I did all the actual work. Honestly, these kids of today...
After basking in my glory, it was time for the exhibition. Although Will, Alex and Spencer had already made their way to the Magic Lantern Cinema, so I hurried to get there in time. Admittedly, I ended up getting lost in Towin, so I had to frantically ask Will to give me directions before my phone lost battery, which it was very close to doing. Upon arriving, we were all huddled in a large queue, but we were entertained by a very talented young man who played the Thomas theme on the piano in the hallway. Once in the screening room, Spencer and I were seated together for the lecture, which was very interesting to listen to. In the first half, Audrey talked about his approach to writing the stories, including his guide, which included accuracy, consistency, brevity, a careful choice of words, and fluency. While we all already knew, it was incredibly fascinating to learn how much care he put into his books. As an aspiring writer, it was especially useful advice to listen to. He really took his world and characters deadly seriously, and was proud to be one of the only writers of fictional stories about locomotives who was praised by railway workers for accurately representing them. Only the modern show followed that. There was also a bit more information on Audrey's feud with Dalby, which made quite a bit of sense now after hearing his unprofessional attitude towards the book series he'd been hired to narrate. Before the break, we were also treated to another narration from the Reverend, which is of the story Little Old Twins. As mentioned before, it was lovely hearing his voice narrate his own stories. I swear, if they put these narrations on a DVD, I'd buy 15. Following the break, we were treated to an explanation of how Audrey's world and character descriptions changed over the years. For example, how Thomas was originally imagined as a Ginty instead of an E2 like he ended up becoming, as well as the complicated origins of Edward and James. After the lecture ended, Blue Mountain Mystery was screened in the cinema, as a treat for the fans, although I chose to leave because it was getting late and the duvet called, but the rest of the gang stayed behind for the film. The following morning, I had another exhibition slot with Spencer and Dante, where I listened to the Duke narrations for a final time, and once more enjoyed looking at the props. I also got to take some photos of my wooden railway Rusty with the real thing, which was a truly special moment in my life. My childhood had come to life before my very eyes. Also, as Matt and I noticed, our Rusties were almost completely identical, which we found amusing. They looked in worse shape than the engine that's decades old. Also, we all decided to take a group photo of Rusty, and it's a photograph that I will treasure for a very long time. Just having all of us together with a character from our childhood, it's honestly beautiful. Then we all decided to board the first train to Abergwynolwen in order to experience the exhibition on the other end of the line, and to take part in all of the activities at the station. We were also lucky, as Narrow Cage was our engine. Once we reached the station, there was an awful lot to see inside. There were several of Audrey's original models on display, illustrations from books featuring Thomas's branch line, and also Audrey's Ffarquhar layout was being run. So we got to see his models in action, the same way they would have been when Audrey himself took them to model shows. They also had the reference material for the CGI render of Glyn and the branch line for the CGI series. But most excitingly of all was the original model of Harold the Helicopter from Series 2 back in 1986. An artefact of mine and so many other people's childhood. And getting to see such a classic character's model was completely surreal. As well as that, they also had the prop of Giles Station, which was incredible to see. Following that, Alex, Dante, Matt and I decided to take a ride on Fred's shuttle, While a short ride, it was a brilliant one. We sat in an open carriage, so we got to enjoy the chilly breeze, and once again the scenery was beautiful. Definitely one I'd recommend if it returns next year. We also got to see a cool props model of Thomas, which was amazing to see in person. True to their word, they had created an almost perfect replica of the original model. Following our fun, we all returned to wharf in Dolgoch to hang out for the rest of the day before the final event. After spending a day at the wharf, it was time for the final train of the weekend, the photo charter. This year I'd been lucky enough to get tickets, as had Dante and Will. So we boarded the last train of the event, and what a train it was. It was incredibly fun to be allowed right beside the line in order to take shots of Sir Handel while he stood stationary. While the crowd could make it difficult to get clean shots, when I did, I was very proud of the results I got. It was also fun when Sir Robert Norrenby and Mr. Percival posed with Sir Handel before engaging in combat to the death. As always, we stopped at Dolgoch to recreate images from Passengers and Polish on the viaduct and Gallant Old Engine at the water tower. It's worth saying that, since guests weren't allowed on the track, I had to ask someone who was to get an accurate shot for me, so thanks to that kind person. We then finished with the recreation of the refreshment lady running for the train, which both Adam and Matt posed for, as well as Robert Norrenby and Fergus Duncan. Once we returned to the wharf, Alex and I quickly posed for photos beside Sir Handel before he left to return to Sodor a mere minute later. Good timing on our part, I must say. And just like that, another fantastic event had sadly concluded. But we weren't finished yet. That evening, I said goodbye to Spencer, who had to leave early the following morning. The next morning, those left stayed at the railway for a bit to see all the engines operating normally once more. All the Sudrians had gone home. Except for Rusty, the little diesel had decided to hang around for a bit. So he took more photos with him. After that, we said goodbye to Matt and Dante and headed to Bala Lake, where we were joined by Adam for a final group activity before the three of us continued with our holiday. And getting to spend another day after the event with our friends was very special indeed. After that, we said goodbye to Adam, and the three musketeers continued with our adventures. We went to Severn Valley Railway, where we got to see Douglas, the one Tanniclin engine we'd yet to see this year in the Railways Museum while she awaited her overhaul. We was especially pleased to see Douglas, as he cleaned her while volunteering. We then headed to the Dean Forest line the next day, where we saw Wilbert, the engine named after the Reverend himself, who starred in his own Railway Series book, which, coincidentally enough, is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. As for the engine itself, it was looking slightly worse for wear, and was missing a boiler. But, being a fan of the book for my whole life, I was still very happy to see the real Wilbert. Our final stop was at Drayton Manor Theme Park, and what a bang our holiday ended with. We got to see more props from the show, all arranged to resemble scenes from the show, such as Bulgy stuck under the bridge. We also got to see some more of Audrey's models, specifically his models of Thompson Edward. We also did several rides. The Captain ride once again awakened my competitive spirit, as I ducked behind the walls and leapt from seat to seat, spraying Will with the water cannons. And, no matter how old you get, the Troublesome Trucks roller coaster will never not be a blast. We also didn't just do Thomas Lamb rides, but those are the ones relevant to this project. I bring this all up because, at the end of the day, we rode in the character that brought us all together, Thomas. And that is the point of this whole story, my friends. Here we were, three people who didn't grow up together and didn't know of each other before joining the fandom. Yet here we were, on a weeks-long holiday with each other. Everyone in our friendship group I consider my closest friends. And what brought us all together? The Reverend and his stories. And these events just brought us closer by giving us a venue to all meet in person, and even make new friends. And now we're at the point where we regularly meet when we can and talk on Discord almost daily. Thanks to the Reverend and his creation, I had hope in a rough childhood filled with medical issues, and now I have a close group of friends, a family even, lads I will treasure until the day I die. And it was all because of the Reverend Audrey that we all entered each other's lives. Thank you, Wilbert, for your creation that means truly everything to me. Thank you to everyone at the Tallyclyn Railway for so beautifully honouring him and his work.